right before the 11 o'clock Central, 12 midnight Eastern deadline. I get a notice from Taylor Korn, our social media director, who works even that late at night. And she's like, hey, do a video real quick. Labaron Philon is coming back to Alabama. And I'm like, I throw the nightcap back, and
you have to light your candle again,
just like that the Christmas story.
Yeah,
something was dancing in my rooftop. It was Labaron Philon delivering a great present to Alabama fans. Philon's coming back. The guy I thought had zero interest playing college basketball again. Zero interest. For him to come back to play at Alabama, she asked me. Taylor said, "Hey, how shocked are you about this?" I said, on a scale of 0 to 100. With 100 being shocked, most shocked, I am 99.9. It shocks me he's back.
It shouldn't be shocking, though. I think he made a wise decision. I don't think Labaron was going to go in the first round, and I think he ultimately heard that in 29 minutes before the deadline. He decided to pull out here. He's going to make 7 figures plus. You heard 15 days ago when we had Nate Oats on the show when we were out at the Regions, he said, yeah, we've saved a spot for him.
Say that again, Lance, because when he said that, it came on a day
that was 15 days ago.
Yeah,
that's hard to believe.
Yeah,
that wasn't the shocking part.
It was.
Well, because when he said that came. We didn't have time to tell you. It had just broke while you were shaking Nate's hands. It had come across the wire that at the NBA Combine, Philon had told CBS reporters that he was all in on the draft. He was done with college basketball.
And there was no return. Right?
That had come out, and I didn't have a chance to show you that before you asked Nate Oats the question about the roster, and Nate said, we were saving him, and I was just rolling my eyes. I was like,
but
what a waste of time. You're saving that spot for no reason at all.
No, but Philon is smart in this regard because all you need is a glimmer of hope and continue to play your hand that you're not going to come back. And all Alabama's going to do, either they're going to tap out, or if you've got one person in your camp that is like, hey, look, he's not 100% yet, then you can still negotiate on the other side. And I guarantee you those dollars just kept going up for Labaron.
But looking back, maybe it's just revisionist history in my mind, but looking back, as you now know everything that unfolded, the way Nate answered that question, told me no matter what Labaron said, he still in his mind thought that door was open.
Yeah, there's a chance.
Yeah, there's a chance. I think because Nate, I don't think Labaron said that without Nate knowing that Labaron was going to probably say that when asked. Now, he might not have known 5 minutes before we were interviewing him that Labaron was going to be asked and say that.
Yeah.
But I think Nate knew he was in that mindset. But as I look back on Nate Oats now and the way he answered that question, I think Nate knew that door is still open no matter what Labaron says.
Yeah, I would. You can go watch the entire interview with Nate Oats to see what Brown's talking about in our Coca-Cola interview series from the Regions Tradition, always on our YouTube channel there. Go check that out. To your point, I think what you're saying is Nate Oats, Coach Preston, the whole staff, they sort of knew Labaron Philon's NBA stock.
That's right. I think
their good basketball minds sort of knew what Labaron's stock was to NBA people, because how many times – he named 3 teams that he'd spent the summer with, so he has good NBA contacts, Nate Oats does. I think Nate Oats knew what Philon's NBA stock was, where he was going to go in the draft, and he was saving that position open just in case somebody got to Labaron and turned the light on for him and saying, Labaron, you need to come back to school. I thought it was brilliant that Oats saved the spot for him, and he made it sound like, if you remember, like we want Labaron through this whole process to know that we love him and we got a place for him here at Alabama if he needs it.
Well, Nate's always had a little fascination with the NBA. You guys tell me where he's just got his most recent assistants from.
NBA, 3 straight.
Do you think those guys maybe had a conversation with Nate and with Labaron and said, hey, look, we were just in the league. You have got an incredible skill set. You're raw, though. And the way this business works, if you're not drafted in the first round, they're not locked in on you, and you don't have a guaranteed contract. And we see, just coming from that league, your potential, and we're going to work with you on, things on your arsenal that can get better, that we need to refine to get you to the next level.
Yeah, because to your point, you can go sell Philon on, I got a staff full of assistants that know exactly what those teams are looking for. And they'll get that out of you if you want to come back here one more year. Yes, to your point, I think Nate Oats was answering that question knowing at some point Philon was going to have to look in the mirror and say, I am not guaranteed in the first round. Am I willing Am I willing to play G League? Am I willing to have to go to Europe? Or do I want to go back to Alabama and make probably somewhere in the neighborhood of what, you said that.
Plus over $1 million.
Yeah, over $1 million.
Yeah.
And look, here's the thing for both Pettiford and Philon. I don't think it's going to get any worse for them playing another year of college basketball.
Oh, no, not at all.
Like, worst case, I think Philon and Pettiford are right back at this same spot next year where I can come out, I could test the waters, I may or may not be first round. I think that is your absolute worst case for both those guys without some sort of serious injury.
But you'll have that insurance policy on top of that. So they take care of that.
Yeah,
hey, look,
right.
catastrophic injury, here's what we've got in place. We'll pay for this policy
because
for you.
You don't come back without that for dang sure. So, yes, I think both those guys, worst case scenario, they're right back where they were at this time next year. Best case, they play their way well up into the first round. Maybe lottery. I don't know. I don't know that either one of them will be a lottery guy, but you never know.
Yeah, I would say that neither will be.
But keep this in mind. Keep this in mind, and I don't think enough people are talking about this, is this year in college basketball, what do we lose? We lose all those bonus year COVID guys. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, the average age, other than Chad Baker-Mazara at USC, the average age of college basketball drops tremendously now. So these two guys come back, and I'm not saying the quality of basketball is going to drop a little bit in the game, but now the quality of experience is dropping a little bit in college basketball. So there's an opportunity for Pettiford with more playing time, a starter. They're going to run the offense through him at Auburn. And Philon with no Mark Sears to eat up some scoring, that those numbers can look a little different. More freedom of playing for Philon and Pettiford, that they could look more, maybe not lottery, but more entrenched in the first round as players for this upcoming year. I think the opportunity is there for both of them.
Yeah. But if you're not in the lottery, to your point, Lance, if you're not in the lottery, guess who's drafting you all of a sudden? The
Boston
Celtics, New York Knicks, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Oklahoma City's got 1 billion draft picks coming up. I mean, that's that. So your worst case maybe is I go late first round, but I go to an amazing franchise and I'm making good money doing it.
And by the way, Chad Baker-Mazara is older than the average age of guys on the roster for Oklahoma City.
Yes.
25.6. I think he's older than that.
I think you're right. I think he's older than 25.6.
If Indiana finishes off the Knicks tonight, I think Chad Baker technically is older than the average age of both rosters,
both Indiana and Oak City.
Oak City.
That is believable. Back to a point you were making, with Sears gone, that's 19 points per game. You're talking about the number one offense in college basketball at 91 points per game with Alabama. I mean, there's going to be opportunities to put up a lot of numbers if you're Labaron Philon, because right now, who would that go-to guy be? It probably is Philon, right?
Well, it needs to be, and I say this with love.
I think Holloway's going to be a lot better and a lot more utilized this year.
He was one of the best outside shooters in the SEC this past season.
I say this with love and respect, and I am so glad he's back. But there were games last year that Labaron Philon disappeared in. Like you were like, where's Labaron Philon? Yeah. Where's his points? What's going on? Now you had Mark Sears, you had Grant Nelson who had big games, you had Aiden who would have some big games, but there were moments that you were like, man, Philon's where's Philon? If he's really a first round NBA guy, where's Philon? In fairness, that was some games Pettiford didn't show up, like in the SEC tournament. More consistency and being that guy you can count on every night to go 15 plus. I think that's out there for Labaron Philon.
It's a good backcourt with Reitzel back, Houston Millette, Holloway.
News is Houston Millette gets that red shirt, the medical red shirt. We knew that was going to happen, but the paperwork came in yesterday, works out for him.
But you got those four. That's a pretty good backcourt for Alabama. Good shooting
Definitely
backcourt.
shoot it.
Good shooting backcourt for Alabama.
And what did Nate Oats tell us at the Coca-Cola Series?
Best shooting team he's ever had.
Best shooting team he's ever had.
Yep.
So to wrap up the basketball conversation to start with here, not the only one. We'll get back to it later on. There you see the Alabama basketball mood there, Philon, with the big jam box dancing in the locker room there. These two programs, Auburn and Alabama, Final Four, Elite Eight last year. Bama, the Final Four before that. SEC regular season, tournament championships, just reigning on the state here. Business as usual this year for Auburn and Alabama?
I think so, just because, back to, we get into these football discussions. you lose 8 guys on offense. Well, we know who the established coach is, and every single year they have success. You've got that now with Bruce. You got that with Nate. I mean, Bruce has been to 2 Final Fours. Nate from a first Final Four to a regional final again last year. You just figure these guys know how to assemble the roster, and they've already got a good, solid core to begin with.
Nate back-to-back Elite Eights. I mean, I know Bruce in the Final Four last year, but Nate back-to-back Elite Eights. That's rare company too.
I kind of think that's the preseason expectation now for both these schools, don't you?
Yeah. Oh,
as long as Bruce Pearl is the coach at Auburn, and now he's finally gotten that, out. And we said it a lot, and it was a fair criticism outside of the Final Four run. The guy goes out early in the tournament. Well, he's got 2 Final Four runs now, so we can quit saying that. But, I mean, I think if I'm an Alabama and Auburn fan, as long as Nate Oats and Bruce Pearl are my coaches, Elite Eight is where I start the year. I mean, it's not always going to happen. Nobody makes every Elite Eight. Duke doesn't do that. North Carolina doesn't do that. Tom Izzo doesn't do that. But as a fan, it's going to be my expectation moving forward.
Don't get me wrong, because I don't think this would satisfy either fan base that I'm about to say, and I'm only the co-host on the basketball show with Taylor Corn.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Auburn will be perceived in the preseason as at least the Elite Eight roster, and I think Alabama will be perceived in the preseason as at least a Sweet 16 roster. Now, I don't think either fan base will be happy if they only go to the Sweet 16 and the other one to the Elite Eight, but I think that's how the perception will be of these two teams when we tip things off in November, is that Alabama will be slightly behind Auburn on the roster scale. And, where Kentucky factors in, that spent a lot of money. Florida has rebuilt the national championship team down there.
Well, I was going to say,
Arkansas is pretty good.
I assume both are going to be definitely top 15, maybe top 10, but when you start to look just around the SEC, how many teams do you have in the top 10? I mean, Florida's going to be back there look, they are, with Condon coming back, that is big, and getting Boogie Flan, but the roster is not going to be as good. But because they're coming off winning a national championship, they're going to be top 10.